family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Jar.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to yet another edition of Tough Talking Thursday. My name is Dennis Jar, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. In tonight's edition of Tough Talking Thursday, we're going to be looking at the April tears. In April, some say April is not a very great month for Liberia. We had April 14, 1979, we had the riots where estimated over 200 persons were killed. We also had the April 12, 1980 coup d'etat in which President Turbot was assassinated with other Liberians killed. Then we have April 6, what is known today as the Butt Naked War. That was another war that took the lives of many Liberians. So I refer to that the tears of April. But what lessons can we learn from all those tragic events happening in April in Liberia? We're going to talk about those. With me, we have Dr. Abdullah Dukle to figure this out. Dr. Duke, welcome to Tough Talking Thursday.
Thank you, Dennis. Happy to be here.
Are you muted, that?
No, I'm not muted.
Okay, I think that was my system. Welcome to the show. You can unmute. No, you are now muted. You can unmute yourself. All right. Let me also welcome Mr. Thomas B. Cannon. Mr. Cannon, welcome to Tough Talking Thursday.
Thank you, Dennis. Great to be here today.
And I want to welcome Councillor Frederick Jewer. He's a panelist on FOL Justice Forum. Councillor Jewer, welcome to Tough Talking Thursday.
Thank you, Dennis. I'm happy to be here. Hi to all Liberians. And
Councillor Jewer is here for a very special reason. Every time we have some legal questions, we want to call Councillor Jewer to kind of explain things to us, because it's very easy for all of us to be lawyers overnight. And I meant that as a joke. So we always have the legal minds to kind of enlighten us on these things. We want to welcome all our viewers from across the globe. This is Tough Talking Thursday. We talk tough here, and there is no room for tabata. Well, Councillor Jewer is here. So there's a case involved where the CPP took their case to the Supreme Court. Well, we have the ruling, and it says the Supreme Court rejects the CPP quest to nullify the ongoing voters registration. It says NEC, or the National Election Commission, is not in any violation of the Constitution. This case was taken to the Supreme Court by the CPP, that's the collaborating political party, to stop the voter registration. They said the action of the NEC to conduct voter registration after the conduct of census, but without constitutionally demarcating constituency into which a voter is to be registered, was unconstitutional. So they took that issue to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, no way, we can't throw that out. Don't disturb what the NEC is doing. So, Councillor Jewer, that's why we call you. You know, a lot of us will kind of put little politics in it. We say, well, we are Supreme Court, or is this one, is this way? So we want to ask you about this case. First, walk us through what the case is about, and what's the whether you agree or disagree with the Supreme Court ruling. First, tell us what the ruling is and your position.
So let me tell you that I agree with the Supreme Court, and we can move on. Okay. This case is about the CPP filing a petition for a writ of prohibition before the justice in chambers at the Supreme Court of Liberia. The justice in chambers, considering the constitutionality of the issue raised that were all constitutional, decided to file the matter over to the full bench. Now, under our laws, where constitutional issues are clearly and squarely raised, a lower court judge or a justice in chambers will have to file the matter over to the Supreme Court, the full bench, where the justices, four of the justices, and the Chief Justice will sit and hear the merit of the complaint. The contention of the CPP in their petition is that the Election Commission should be prevented, or was to be prevented, from going ahead and continuing to register Liberians for the October 10, 2023 election. Their argument is that after the censor, there should have been an immediate demarcation of constituencies in order for before the Election Commission could proceed to ensure that the registration could continue. That was the argument, and that's why they applied to the Supreme Court, approaching the court on a petition for a writ of prohibition. Now, the Supreme Court said in its judgment, in short, that there's no reason to distract or take away from what the National Election Commission is currently doing by registering Liberians, because the NEC has not proceeded by wrong rules or acting alien to our practice and tradition. What did the court mean by that? First, as a Supreme Court lawyer and as a practicing and experienced lawyer, I would say that the approach of CPP told the Supreme Court by a petition for a writ of prohibition was wrong. Why do I say that? A petition for a writ of prohibition is filed to determine two things. One, to prevent an action that is considered unlawful and wrong. Stop it. Two, to ensure that an action that was wrongly done is reviewed and set aside. Now, none of those constituted what the NEC has been engaged with. NEC, by the election law, is permitted to proceed to ensure that Liberians that wish to register and vote, including voting in the October 10th, 2023 election, are registered. Now, if the CPP thought that there should have firstly been a constituency demarcation prior to the registration, then the process to go before the Supreme Court and ask for the court intervention is not by prohibition. Because this is an official act that shall be declared by the legislature and empowering, ensuring that the NEC proceeded to demarcate in order to determine this constituency in order for the election to go on October 10, 2023. So then the appropriate proceeding or the appropriate approach as a lawyer would have been a petition demanding, a mandamus petition demanding that the demarcation of the constituency went ahead prior to the registration of Liberians, but not to prohibit the registration. So when I read the decision, what I thought was that, look, it is important that lawyers represent the client as lawyers. It is important that you remove politics away from a legal process to ensure that the law is obeyed. What did I mean? I meant that, and I still mean that, choosing the right form of action, the Supreme Court will have listened. That is comparing, using a petition for a writ of mandamus to compare the official duty that should have been performed by the NEC to be performed, not to stop the NEC by prohibition, because prohibition doesn't have anything to do with that. But when you look at when you file a complaint without researching enough to determine what the Supreme Court has said, the distinction between prohibition proceeding and a mandamus proceeding, then you are likely to go before the Supreme Court as a person who is not prepared at all. And the Supreme Court will say that's no reason to serve what the Election Commission has been doing.
Councillor Joe, but that was not what the Supreme Court, that was not the reason they threw it out.
No, I disagree with. I agree with the judgment of the Supreme Court, but I disagree with the reasoning.
All right, so let's take it one step at a time. First of all, the CPP quoted Article 80E, which states, immediately following a national consensus and before the next election, the Election Commission shall reapportion the constituencies in accordance with the new population figure so that every constituency shall have as close to the same population as possible, provided, however, that a constituency must be solely within a county. That's Article 80E. Was that violated by the... So should registration take place if this has not happened?
So in as much as the NEC did not demarcate the constituency prior to the registration, the application before the Supreme Court could not be a prohibition.
Okay.
Because it is an official constitutional duty vested or placed on the shoulder of the NEC to perform. The failure to perform that official duty, it can be settled by only mandamus, not by a petition to prevent the registration. So even though the Supreme Court did not rule that way, the Supreme Court said that Article 80 in itself is not self-executing, and I disagree. Article 80E is clear as daylight. It requires certain things to be done, and it is a clear mandate given to the NEC. The NEC did not follow that mandate. But how do you proceed to query the NEC? Not by way of prohibition.
It should be McDermott.
It should have been McDermott.
So tell us the difference. What is this McDermott that can stop them?
So a petition for a real McDermott under our practice is a request to demand that an official obligation of a government institution or one that is constitutionally constituted performs its duty.
So that McDermott could have been against the legislature, not the NEC.
If I were a lawyer for the CPP at the time, I would name both of them.
No, but the NEC is not neglecting its constitutional or obligation. That's why it's performing. That's why they are registering.
Well, no, the NEC is proceeding to register people without the constituency being set aside, even though it is a constitutional mandate for it to do so. So if I were filing a petition for McDermott before the Supreme Court, I would name the NEC as a second respondent. I would name the legislature as a first respondent, because you want to make sure that you don't leave a loophole for the justices to roam around. That's what the justices were doing. Justice Nangwe asked the lead lawyer that represented the CPP, why did you people leave the legislature out? Were you afraid? But that room was left for Justice Nangwe to ask that kind of question. If they have named them, firstly, if they are proceeded by McDermott, because what the NEC were doing was not unconstitutional. It was not anything that you could prohibit or inhibit. It was a legal duty that they were carrying on, but they should have not carried on that duty prior to the demarcation. So then a petition to compel them to carry on that duty before the registration should have been entertained. But the lawyers were interested in, oh, you know what? We'll go to the Supreme Court. We'll stop it. One of the justices asked, I think, Mr. Councillor Toh, has Mr. Comey registered? And Councillor Toh said, yeah, he has registered. So why are you here? So
that was a trick question.
Of course. Why didn't you stay away and say that you're coming on prohibition? If he has registered, then you have defeated your purpose for being before us. Because you can't complain and enjoy the benefit of your complaint. The other thing the justices said, which was interesting, was that,
so
what is CPP? What CPP is what? Because Chief Justice Yo was saying that CPP could be a body associating, members associating among themselves, but it is not a legal body. But all in all, they proceeded by the wrong rule. They proceeded to ask the Supreme Court to prohibit to prevent the registration to go on when they should have asked the Supreme Court to compel the NEC to ensure that demarcation was done.
So, if I understand pretty well, this is like they did the wrong filing.
Correct.
Okay, so if they had done the right filing, they would have stopped it.
Correct. So that's why I
Okay.
say it is an interesting situation that you do not go. The Supreme Court is not a place to play. You don't go there guessing. You go there ensuring that you have done sufficient research and that if tested, the law is on your side for which your client interest will be protected. But I'm sure what people are saying, Monrovia, right now is that, oh, this is a Southeastern bench. Because 4 of the justices on the Supreme Court are from the Southeast. No, you did not do the right thing. It had nothing to do with Southeastern bench. It had more
How
to
did
do.
they vote? How did they vote?
All the justices?
Yeah.
I assume this is now you can assume this is a unanimous judgment.
Okay.
But again, the Supreme Court had room to play because the lawyers that went before the court went there wrongly, proceeded wrongly. Secondly, they left a lot of room for the Supreme Court justices to play around. They could not confine them to a principle of law and the tradition of the practice. So they lose. Yeah, they lost on the technical ground.
So, but the Supreme Court said, according to the High Court in the instant case, Article 80E is linked and interdependent on the other, and while the NEC has a duty under Article 80E to reapportion constituency, the said duty is not self-executing, but rather the duty to reapportion constituency can only be executed based upon the precondition that a national census report be concluded and submitted to the legislature.
That's one of the loopholes that I thought is. In fact, the Supreme Court went further to say that it did not take this matter to be an election matter. I disagree. Any matter that would border upon the fairness, transparency, and consistency of election in Liberia, it is an election matter, and the Supreme Court must give due diligence, give due opportunity to ensure that the matters are such matters are heard within due course. Now, the dependency that the Supreme Court referred to, I think, was another way of finding loophole and just passing between that hole. The Article 80E is pretty clear. It's not dependent upon anything. In my view, the Supreme Court did not interpret that law correctly. But again, if you have gone before the Supreme Court with considering the rightful procedure or the application, the Supreme Court would have had its hand tied as to what would be done. But the lawyers went hoping that prohibition would be sustained. And the justices said, no, we will not disturb what the Election Commission is doing. Prohibition stops on constitutional act, not constitutional act that means performed.
And you say this is wrong. The Supreme Court said the case does not constitute an election matter within the contemplation of the constitutional mandate that the Supreme Court hears and decides on an election matter within 7 days. You said the Supreme Court is wrong on this one.
I think the Supreme Court went far away from the law, because any matter that is bordered on the fairness and the transparency of election in Liberia, whether raised growing out of voting or raised growing out of a census that was concluded, that matter is an election matter. Because all the party were asking for was that stop the registration and go and do the right thing. That's what they were asking for. Had they proceeded by mandamus, the Supreme Court would have little room to run around.
Thank you.
But
Mr. Cannon. Mr. Cannon, you have questions or you have comments? Okay, go ahead, Dr. Doe.
I mean, people would say, why would people not say that this is a partisan court if you, listen to just what you said? I mean, they could have found a way to say, okay, we can redress this. You know the law, but why do they have to go this way?
Whenever you proceed before the Supreme Court by wrong rules,
I'm referring to that quote that Dennis was just presenting to you. Where he said, something that is happening at NEC involving another political party, and you say that's not election.
Mm-hmm. That's why the Supreme Court said. I said
that's why people will say you are partisan. You are partisan if you don't see election matter in something that is brought before the Supreme Court concerning NEC by a political party, and you say that's not election related. Then people say, yeah, maybe you got your eyes to somewhere.
I think I don't know why they said that, but I think the Supreme Court should have never said that, because again, as I said, any matter that would be foundation upon a political party questioning the constitutionality of an issue that relates to election, that's an election matter. It's not. All the Supreme Court is giving an elementary interpretation to that provision of the law. What they are saying is that in order for it to be election matter, people must have voted and there must have been a contest. That's not true. It goes beyond that.
Thank you. Thomas, question or comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask quickly. The councillor was saying that, they filed the wrong papers or they didn't follow the right direction, but he had mentioned that if they were filing the rate of mandamus, they would have included the legislation and the NEC. So my question is, where do we leave LesJS out of this? Because LesJS has the legal authority to be able to conduct a census and to put out a census. I think at the point where we are, LesJS said that what they put out are preliminary numbers, so they are not final. So if you want the Election Commission to use that, will you not also ask LesJS to complete it and put it out for it to be used? So where do we leave LesJS out of all of this?
So I'm not one of those who believe that again, let me go back. Whether the legislature completed its work and reported to the legislature of Liberia, or whether the report is preliminary or not, they should have been named in the petition. Because if legislature has performed its constitutional duty as is required under the law, that would have ended its work. So whether the demarcation of the constituency, then leaving the idea or the legal responsibility for the demarcation of the constituency, that would have been left with the national with the NEC as stated in 80E. So they will perform a constitutional duty by conducting a census, and that will have ended their role. So anything that grow out of there, and I'm not advocating that the preliminary results should be used in this October, should be used to in this October 10, 2023 election. I think the census was flawed. I do not think that, because it's funny, I all read that Grand Crew County has more people than people in Nima County. I went to school in Yakuba. So it's impossible to even believe, and I've been in Yakuba for about 4 years before I do my seminary degree. It's impossible to believe that Grand Crew County will have people even equivalent to San Nicolas. So it's very difficult for me to even believe that. And that part of it is flawed. So I would not have named them as a party. I would have named the national legislature, and I would have named the NEC, because the responsibility to ensure that at least each constituent had about 20,000 representation in those political subdivision would have been the thing. So 80 doesn't really apply to them. 80E doesn't apply to them.
So, Councillor Job, quick correction that Grand Crew does not have people more than Nimba. Grand Crew grew at a greater percentage than Nimba.
Oh, okay. So, so the people in there, they still have the same number?
No, Grand Crew number. Let's say if you were 10 in the house and 10% added, you grew at a rate of 100%. If other people were 30 and 2% added, even though they are still more, but they grew at a rate of 2%. Just simple.
I've been to Grand Crew though, so I know Grand Crew, I know Sando. Look, go ahead.
So my next question is, you mentioned earlier that the one of the justices asked whether Mr. Alexander Cummings has registered, and yes, he has registered. So my question now is, if they file the right way and file a writ of McDonald's, considering that he has already benefited from the voters' registration, would that still stand?
You mean prior to the petition?
He has already registered. Now the Supreme Court has thrown this out of the case, and like you're saying, they should have filed a McDonald's rather than a state order. So if they reverse and file the right papers, but he has already benefited from the voters' registration, would that still stand scrutiny before the Supreme Court?
So the petition is done. The judgment of the Supreme Court as it is stands unless within a period of 3 days a petition for re-argument was filed before the court. I don't think they have done that. Send no petition or file for re-argument. That matter is done. They cannot return to the court this time to correct themselves to say, oh, now we need to file a petition for mandamus. What I'm saying is that prior to filing a proceeding before the Supreme Court, you better know very well that when you measure your complaint against the law, it will stand. So you don't, that's why I said take away politics. You may be, a member of CPP or Unity Party or whatever party you are, but you must be loyal to know that this complaint that you are taking before the court, if it is determined against your interest, is injurious against your client interest, and you cannot come back. So you got to study all of the pros and cons before you even attempt to say, well, we choose prohibition, or we choose rated error, or we choose statutory, or we choose mandamus. You cannot. You better be able to understand that this petition will stand the test if I should file it. If you don't understand that, ask other lawyers that are experienced. Talk to some people who are older than you, who have very good background in the practice before the Supreme Court, because you're not going there and coming back. You're going to get harmed or you're going to win.
Who were the lawyers for CPP?
I think Councillor Toll, Elisha Toll, and then there's one Councillor Finlay Kanga. Finlay Kanga, there were two lawyers. But again, those are things that you learn the hard way when you get to be switched the way the Supreme Court did. You may complain, but you have been whipped, and your client has lost.
Oh well.
Dr. Duke, you don't say it. You don't like the ruling.
Say what? No, I mean, it's not about the ruling. It's a whole lack of professionalism, what we do. Legis has not completed his job, and then NEC goes on his own safari, and the national ID system is working, so you don't know who's doing what. And then we go to election in 5-6 months. Everybody's like, oh yeah, we're going to fix it, but nobody's fixing it. So these things happen, everybody go to court, and then the court say, yeah, go back and go, you're wrong or you're right. But it's very, very worrisome when you think about it, that our political class seems so immature in dealing with real issues. You don't make this kind of mistake. You don't make the wrong filing.
Oh, yeah.
You go to the Supreme Court. Yeah. There are so many former Supreme Court lawyers in town.
Oh, yeah.
Who say, what do you think?
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, that's my position. I think that, I take Councillor Jawa's, word for it. He said there was a mistake in the filing, and that means the people made a mistake and they didn't do the homework.
And let me just add this. This is like also asking what will happen after October 10, 2023. How will people proceed before the Supreme Court? And for what? What would be the approach? Again, if you proceed, the Supreme Court will make technical decision against you if you proceeded in the wrong manner.
Dennis, I just wanted to pick up from where Dak was speaking, because to me, when the issue of the CPP going to the Supreme Court came out, it was a bit confusing as a citizen, because you had Unity Party, and this is outside the law, just the political nature of it. You had a Unity Party with, I think, 7 other political parties submitting a petition to the House of Representatives contesting the validity of the census result, and saying that they have done their research. They've compared this with the growth of the population from 2008 to 2016 National Household Expenditure and Income Survey, and all of that. They did the analysis. They don't believe that the numbers, the preliminary numbers, were correct. So if that argument is going on one side, and you go to the Supreme Court and say to the Supreme Court that these numbers should be used for constituency demarcation, then where is the approach? Let's say from the opposition, for instance, you say one group of people are saying it's not valid, and the other group of person is saying use it. There's a constitutional provision for it, though. But like Dak is saying, I don't think they are approaching these things very, very well. And every time you slip, you're going to be punished.
And Mr. Kanna, there is nothing like opposition bloc, right? People are individual political parties. So the group that went before and said, well, the census is not right. Remember now, the CPP was not part of them. And the question you asked is very crucial. What if they file what Councillor Jewel said they should file? But yet you have already registered. It means you trust the system. So you register in the system, because if you don't register, if you don't register again before you do, so you register and say, hey, the system, the process that is going on is unconstitutional, but I have participated in the unconstitutional system. So I want you to nullify everything. Is it logical or is it constitutional? How do you really reconcile that?
This attitude that Mr. Kanna just mentioned speaks loudly to the division within the opposition. It points to people contesting amongst themselves as to who, what political party may have much more the leverage or the capability to ensure that Liberian people can follow them. And so, as you said, 6 Unity Party and 7 other parties went to raise those questions. What I'm hearing is that, and then CPP decided to file a lawsuit with the hope that they maybe if the Supreme Court stops the process, then it will help to sway the people of Liberia onto the CPP. I guess that would have been part of their contention or part of their reasoning. But now that they have lost, I don't know what else they would get from that. It speaks to the opposition now willing to sit down and talk. I have suggested that it's important to get lawyers who are not just partisan, to be able to look at some of these matters before they are filed and advise you and say, look, your contentions are fine, but the proceeding will be wrong. The application, the process to apply that you wish to apply will be wrong. The Supreme Court will take you out. And there are enough retired justices, retired lawyers around the area, or Supreme Court lawyers around that can be able to give you that kind of advice. I'm understanding that the NEC is not going to hold this election based upon the census that was conducted. I'm overhearing that they will follow the 2008 census that was conducted. That's what I'm hearing. But what people are not also, and also the NEC is not particularly concerned that people are trucking people from one district to another district, from one city to another city. You can only vote one time on the 10th of October 2023. Is one day. The election will be one day. So how do you get those people that you took from Kakata to Bomeo to go vote in Bomeo? How do you get them back to Kakata? Do you drive all along just flipping? How do you take people who came from Sanikule to Mangibi, a change of, how do you get them to vote? It is a crime to truck.
From Kongota to Seko.
From
Kongota to Seko.
Yeah. It is a crime because the election law provides that you can only vote within the constituency where you register. So are you going to register in Bombay Hills? Then you come to district number 10 and register there?
No, you register in one place, there you will vote. But Councillor Jewel,
Yeah.
here's the question from me as a non-lawyer. Because, and I'm thinking anyone sitting watching this show will ask the same question. Say, wait, now you want to tell me that Jewel alone know the law? Because how can the CPP, I mean, this is a big organization. They have all the lawyers. They have all the money to pay for the services of any lawyer they want. How can they miss this and only Jewel kind of knows about it? That would be the question. What do you say?
You know, the first thing to consider is that sometimes when you read the actions that have been taken that are considered illegal, you got to sit back and say, okay, it's illegal, then so what now? How do we proceed? Would prohibition be the appropriate means to stop the current voter registration going on? You got to answer those questions. And you will say, is the registration of Liberians to vote on October 10, 2023 by the National Election Commission, is it an issue that can be prohibited by the Supreme Court? There are several questions that you need to ask. And if you don't ask them, and you say, okay, it's wrong for them to not demarcate the constituency and they can't go ahead and register. So what comes to your mind, which is elementary to me, would be, we must go to prohibit that. And if that is your choice, you will proceed with that. You will not talk to anybody else. I do not know whether the CPP has group of lawyers other than Councillor Finlay Kangan, and one of those who basically filed the petition, and Councillor Toe. These are very young lawyers who basically will have all the what it takes to be competent enough. But it may not take experience to understand what it says you're going to the Supreme Court for and how do you go there. So it may be Councillor Jewel may not be the only person who knows such a proceeding. There may be other lawyers who just, Liberia, the people are afraid to talk right now because you will get killed. So there may be other people who will be they will keep quiet. I'm not in Liberia, in Colorado, so I can talk the way I'm talking. Not afraid of what's happening behind that. But I assume other lawyers may have the same idea that this is one of the wrongful way to proceed.
Could another political party come up and take the same process and say, okay, CPP did it wrong, so we are going to take it from this angle, like you said? Can somebody else do it, raise the same issue with the Supreme Court?
So the answer will be yes, you can go before the Supreme Court. The question will be, what would be the factual situation that you'll be presenting to the court? Will it be naming the National Legislature and the NEC together? The other thing the Supreme Court may quickly hop onto will be, is this meant as a purpose to delay the registration that's going on? The court will ask that. Why didn't you do that within a reasonable time frame? Are you intending to delay the process other than what the law actually provides? The Supreme Court could go that way and say this is meant for delay, we're not going to entertain it. Or the justice in Chima may just decide to not entertain it. You can file a petition. The justice in Chima could choose to issue a citation or not to issue a citation, and it might have stopped there.
Thank you, Councillor Jewel, for let me one of our viewers asked a question. Is it Councillor Kanan's question wasn't answered? He asked if there was going to be a difference, because one of the judges asked his counsel if their client had registered, and their lawyer said yes. So can you speak to that?
Yeah, so once Councillor Toe answered I think it was Justice Nangwe, answered Justice Nangwe, it much more clarified the minds of the whole bench that, hey, these guys really coming here to waste our time. They already have said that the proceeding is okay. The party leader has participated in the registration. There is an issue there is a principle of law that says that you cannot benefit from your own wrong. If you thought that this were wrong, you may have proceeded. I think it would have been a risk if they had done that, though. But again, I would say prior to even going to the court, there would have been a way to sit with other lawyers to discuss what do you think. This is a way we're thinking about proceeding. Are we? There's nothing wrong with talking to other lawyers. It doesn't mean you are not competent. It's better to have the experienced lawyer on board to say, hey, you are proceeding wrongly, than to proceed. And to get the justice to make fun out of you while you're arguing. Because all the justice were doing was like, why are you here? You're Manfini registering. You all agree the thing is okay. Why are you people here?
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Jewett. Thank you for the time. We'll take a short break while you leave, and then we start the show for tonight. Again, thank you for coming. Welcome back to Focus on Liberia. This is Tough Talking Thursday. Tonight, our discussion here is about April 14, 1979, April 12, 1980, and April 6, 1996. April 14, 1979, there was a demonstration that went very bad. Today, we call it in Liberia the Rice Riot. Well, there are many sides to the story. Some say there was no riot. The people were gathering at power offices, and the police went and started shooting at them. So there's no riot. But at the end of the day, the government of Liberia called in troops from Guinea, and the reports say about 200 persons were killed. Some people mark this day as the beginning of Liberia's trouble. True or false? We're going to discuss that tonight. Also, we have April 12, 1980. That was the day that President Tubber was assassinated with other Liberians. And days after the coup, 13 of his government officials were also executed. Very, very brutally on the beach. Some say that was the fall of Liberia. Then we have the war that started 89 all the way to 2023. April 6, 1996, the Roosevelt-Johnson War, they call it. That was the time the Council of States, I hope that was their name, two of them, Charles Taylor and Alhaji Kroman, the late, decided to arrest Roosevelt Johnson, and that turned into another war. So people are saying, but what's up with April? Again, on Saturday, we're going to discuss, and there are more things that happen in April. What really this April month is all about. So tonight we're going to talk about April tears. What have we learned? And we've been joined by a long-time Moja LPP progressive member, Mr. Dempster Yala. Mr. Yala, thanks for joining. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, brother. It's so good to be on board with luminaries like my own Dr. Dukale and the rest of the guys. I'm glad to be here, and it's always good to be sharing ideas on how we can improve Liberia moving forward. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Well, so let's start this. We have two persons here who were there when these things happened. We have the young Kane who's reading about these things, except for April 6, 1996 in books. So let me start with the young man, Kane, Mr. Thomas Kane. Mr. Kane, I know you are reading and everything. What do you make of for April 14, the Rice Riot 1979, and April 12, 1980? What you believe? What caused it? What caused these two events?
Then, so like you said, we'll be learning more from the senior people on the panel that saw it in real life, because lived experiences say a lot. But to me, my perspective on all of these things that happen is that many of these things that happen, I mean, when you look at a history of countries, every incident is rooted in another incident. So to me, I look at these as outcomes of other state building processes. And to me, it goes back to the very foundation of the state. You had the settlers coming in, you had the local population that was there. I've always thought that at the beginning, it was impossible for inclusion to really take place because there were battles between the two. Accepting the settlers was not very easy. And over time, the settled independence came and they moved on. And gradually, the local population that was initially not educated, they started to get education, they started to push for inclusion and all of that. So I think what happened in 1980, which was, or 1979, first, the rice riot. When you read the story, there is an economic dimension to it that it was done to be able to increase local rice production by making sure that they imported rice. When I was reading about it, one word that I saw there that is still part of our rice system in Liberia today is the issue of subsidize. So what they were doing basically was to increase the price of subsidized rice by $2. I think from 22, I think, to 26, which was $4. Essentially, the Minister of Agriculture position was when we increase it, it gets expensive, then people might not be able to buy it, they can produce the local rice, and then we can produce. But again, the other side to it was that you have people who were political elites who were already in that sector, doing farming and other things, and then people on the other side said that, I mean, that was done to benefit the other team. So it goes back to the foundation of the state, the lack of inclusion. You could see marginalization playing out there. And you will see that even when you have the best policy options, when a society is not cohesive, it's not inclusive, people then will read it in different ways. So to me, I see all of these things that happen as part of this state building process, where you have two groups coming together to form a state. And for them to actually unify, to come together, to accept each other, to build a cohesive society has always been a challenge. And even up to where we are today, we're still trying to be able to build a state that is inclusive of all of us, that can serve our purpose. But I think these are all outcomes of earlier things that happened in Liberia from the very foundation of the state.
Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, the reason we are discussing April 12, April 6, April 14, because this is the anniversary. It has been 43 years since April 12, 1980, and it's been 44 years since April 14, 1979. April 6, for some, is the more recent incident. And there are a lot of things that happened in April. The Liberia History Channel is going to even dig into that more. And I believe you will like it. Dr. Duke.
Yes, sir.
Is April, bad for Liberia, or the Liberia bad for April?
Well, if we were people who sort of study our culture, study everything that happens, we will probably try to find a link between these events. Why does it happen in April? Is it climate? Is that the weather? Is it just, some sort of energy that's released in us? But I mean, besides that, I think maybe, I would say April was bad. Maybe we could turn it around and make it the month of reconciliation. So that we can put that trilogy of April 14, April 12, April 6, to put it like, to turn it into a reconciliatory, movement. But yeah, it happened, but there's no explanation. But there are political explanations to everything. But there's no other way to explain it. 1979 was bound to happen. The poverty level was so much, urban poverty, the ghettos, and then on the political scene, the president was playing this game of balancing. One day he was with the, conservative in the Tory party wing. The next day he was with the progressive, and then the next day he changed. And so something was bound to happen to in 1979. It was that anger, the poverty, and then the urban migration. People just came to the city, and it was bound to happen. So was that what led to 1980? That's another question. But definitely we can say 1980 produced April 6th, because it was the aftermath of 1980. But I'm not sure you can link 1980 really to what happened in 79.
No, I thought those were the two that were actually linked, right? Because there were people in jail as a result of 1979, and the news spread that they were about to execute them, and so the army needed to act quickly.
That's that's a very simplistic explanation. Don't ever explain why he did the coup. He never said there's not a single interview by any of those PRC members to say this is how we organize it. This is the group that gave us directions. Samuel Doe, when he spoke at 6 o'clock on April 12, it didn't sound like somebody who had prepared a coup d'etat. I heard the first communique, and I followed throughout the day, as they kept coming in. I don't see the link really. I don't see the linkage between the two. That's right. If we can talk about the coup later on, definitely in detail.
Let me go to Mr. Yala. Mr. Yala was part of Moja, and he was a young man at that time, I believe. The Moja wing. This was a PAL, or the Progressive Alliance. This was their thing, and some say Moja tried to play a Pontius Pilate. Wash their hands. Oh, this thing here, we're not part of it. Mr. Yala, you tell me what you know about April 14, 1979, April 12, 1980, and what you make of those two incidents.
Thank you very much again, Brother Ja. April 14, 1979. I don't know where the version came from that the Moja faction of the Progressives tried to wash his hands, out of this, playing Pontius Pilate or so, because as a matter of fact, it was at Moja's program in March the 21st, 1979, I think. Again, the brain is rusted now. But I think it was March 21st, 1979 at the Sports Commission on Broad Street that Moja had a program celebrating the Soweto massacre. Not celebrating it, but remembering it, so to speak. Yeah. And that's where Backup Matthews, attending that program, that's where he made the general pronouncement that there was going to be this demonstration for, if the government intended to increase the price of rice. They had been saying it. PAL at the time, Progressive Alliance of Liberia, they had their own newsletter. And so they wrote it in it, but it was not as widespread as, in fact, when that pronouncement was made at the Sports Commission at a Moja Moja program. So again, you can say Moja was not part of it. Even the Student Unification Party, no, I correct that, not the Student Unification Party, but the University of Liberia Student Union also even did release the leaflets to announce that date, to side with the Progressive Alliance of Liberia, that they support the demonstration, because it was not going to be in the interest of the common Liberians, and so they supported it. So they also wrote printed out leaflet. I was one of those who distributed those leaflets in Monrovia on a Wednesday before the Saturday of the demonstration. All right, so Moja was all into it, because again, it was something, for the Liberian people, in favor of the Liberian people. And the argument was...
Mr. Yala, were those leaflets being distributed openly, or it was like
openly? Okay. As I said, I was one of those who distributed the leaflets. Okay. There was a friend of ours called Wiwi Deba. Wiwi Deba and I went along the, not the capital, but the one by the football field area, the Anthony Tubman Stadium, the barracks.
Yeah.
We went in that area. I mean, adventuristically. I say adventuristically because we were not calculating what would happen to us, but we entered the soldier barracks, we entered the BTC, and were distributing a leaflet. We went to the brigade headquarters. So to just show how adventuristic we were at the time, not calculating what could have happened to us. But we went to the brigade headquarters, we were there by and myself, we were sharing the leaflets with soldier people. And again, let me just, preempt this to say that that might have even helped to the extent that the soldiers were not the ones, shooting at demonstrators, or not demonstrators, but people who were breaking stores and whatnot. So it started off with the police. Why I say that, because when we and I went to the brigade headquarters, distributing the leaflet, the soldiers came around us. They said, what's that? What's that? I caught myself explaining to them that, look, the government wants to increase the price of a bag of rice from whatever it was to whatever they wanted to. And we think that it would not be in the interest of common people like you and the rest of people. I even told them, I said, one like me, I said, I'm at a university. I'm a sophomore student. Within 2-3 years, I'll be graduating from here. I can afford 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 bags of rice. But what about you people? You gentlemen on the forum tonight and those in listening audience would not believe it that the soldiers lifted Weeby Deba and myself up, celebrating us for going there to tell them this, that they were going to be there on Saturday to support this demonstration. So when you think back, when you reflect back, you think, say, well, maybe that even helped to have the soldiers on the side of the people, and the police were doing their own thing. So that's a little bit. I don't know how far you want me to go, but I can go any further or so. So yeah, that's what I want to start with.
So let's get to the next stage. There are people who mark this day as the beginning of all the trouble. Did they? Was this day well intentioned? Did they accomplish anything? Did they change anything for the better?
Is that for me?
Yes, for you.
Well,
you were distributing the leaflets. So.
Yes. It changed a whole lot of things. Firstly, it was not intended to end up in riot. It was not intended to end up in death. Because the simple fact of the matter was that it was intended to be a mere demonstration. It was pronounced publicly, and people were going to do it. But of course, the government came in and said, no, it cannot. It will not happen. Up to today, where the Liberian government today will stop people from demonstrating or so, except for the fact that people will always remind them of these experiences before they will back off. Sometimes they will back off. Sometimes they will continue to do what they want to do. But those days, at that time or so, that was something unheard of. That was something very strange to the government at the time. When they said no, it was no. They didn't want to see anybody demonstrating in the street. But Aberport, from what we read later on, Aberport was shuffling between the executive mansion and the PPP headquarters on Gully Street, trying to lobby for compromise, asking the government not to do anything, that would harm the demonstrators, asking Baker Matthew to back off with the demonstration or so. So that's what was happening. So, it was just, I think it was government overreaction to what happened on that day. It was government overreaction that led to whatever massacre that led to not the demonstration, but the looting, and then the police started shooting at people. So I think it was government overreaction. I can go again deep into that.
Thank you. And what you are referring to is what we, the letter from Albert Port, he wrote that himself the day Monrovia stood still. Mm-hmm. That's what you are referring to. Right. It's an eyewitness account of the rice riot. The day Monrovia stood still, April 14, 1979. This was written May 1979 by Albert Port.
All right.
And if we don't have time to read it, but that's it. Mr. Dr. Duke, let me come back to you. Did 79 change anything for the better or worse? Or no impact?
Well, it's an event that went contrary probably to what the people were expecting. It was a test, political test, and it was bound to happen. Talbot had opened the floodgates of political discourse. he been encouraged backwards to return to Liberia to start a political party rather than be fighting in the diaspora. So there was going to be confrontation between people who had been in power for so long and those who are just aspiring to it. And that confrontation was going to happen. So did it change anything? Well, I think it proved that Liberian people could stand up, sometimes in anger, like, you don't have anything else to do, so you just get up and break everything down. You remember Morovia, before those days, you could walk on Broad Street, all the stores had no, glasses. They all had glass windows. And since then, but I don't think, it's hard to say what it changed. What it changed is that Liberian people say, okay, we can stand up to a government, but then again, the government shoots you, and then you lose 200 people, and nothing comes out of it. So we went back after April 14, we went back to April 15 and back to April 2. We went back, it's like nothing happened. AU came in, celebrated, danced, everybody drank champagne, and it's just like it never happened until April 12 happened. And then we say, oh, so April 14 was bad. It's hard to judge, to play Monday morning quarterback and say, okay, this was good for the country. The violence that, came with it was not good. That government panicked rather than trying to dialogue, that was not good. That backers also organized something like that without having a control mechanism. Because that's the whole thing. People say, okay, they were throwing rocks at the police. Police said they said they were shooting at us, and so we started throwing rocks. He was there, he can tell. But he unleashed something that he had no control over.
And why should he have control over it?
What if?
Well, why did he need to have control over it? Is the government responsibility, right?
No, if you put people in the streets, government is responsible for everybody's peace. So it's like you don't block all the streets, you don't close down major arteries in the city, and then you don't trample on other people's rights. That's the government responsibility. But you who put people in the streets, you also have a responsibility to make sure that those people are doing what is legally possible to do. So if you can't do that, then you create a force that you lose control of, and then whatever happens, you pay the price. It opened the door to some sort of instability, fear on the part of the government, and people who were telling Talbot, don't let anything happen, don't give them any power. Say, you see, we told you, don't give them too much power. This is what will happen. And the progressives now say, okay, we're not going to stop right here. The struggle continues. So it grew into something that nobody could control, and that's where we are today.
Thomas, looking back, as a young man who never saw it, but you read about it, and it's very easy now to look back, some call it reading history backwards. But looking back, do you think what we're in today, 79, 1980, are responsible? Do you think that what caused the war in 1989, 1990?
So, for me, like I said, like Dad said earlier, it was inevitable that perhaps not the Civil War, but that transition of power from a small, very strong group to a growing majority as the country was opening up and bringing all of these other lead war counties into the fold, it was always going to be contentional. And we can even look at it at the global level. Every time there is one superpower that takes over from the other one, sometimes they don't go to open fight, but they will contest every time power is transitioning. And so when I look at the society today, and we also have to, like I said earlier, this is within the context of having a one-party's remaining in power for 27 years with President Tubman, and then Tubman took over from him from the 1970s going to the 1980s. So this contestation is there for the space to be open, like Dak is saying. You're not allowing other political parties to be formed. So to me, as a young person looking back at history, when I look at it, I see where we are today is an outcome of all of these lives that we have to, our fellow citizens that died. But what they were doing was to open a space that we could have a democratic process, because when you look at our political system today, you have all of these political parties. Anyone can just form a political party. I think those uprising in the 70s and in the 80s led to the civil war that we went through, because President Doe, after the coup took over, history tells us that he was the first indigenous president to become president. But then his rule was not democratic, and they were fighting for space and for democracy to be improved. And then that led to the civil war. And I think right now we have a little bit of space. We have a little bit of a free media. Political parties are contesting for power. So when I look back at it, it's brutal. People lost their lives. But I just think that perhaps these are the incidences that got us to where we are today. We just need to improve our democratic culture and be able to move forward.
But before Tubman, we had, multi-party. We had elections, right? Before monopolized.
1955.
Right. So now, if we think that 1980 corrected anything, right? Now, if you look at multi-party in Liberia today, many people say, oh, yes, it's because of 1980, 1979, even though we had parties before until Tubman became a dictator. But is it helping? Are we reaping any benefits from this, multiplicity of political parties? Don't you see the chaos? Now there were two people, a group got in the street today. They said they're going to petition two distinct parties to be one. It's like too much chaos when it comes to anybody can form party, and there's all kinds of things going on.
I agree to you. I agree to you, Dennis. And this is where the frustration is coming from. I think what we have achieved is that participation, but the actual governance has not improved. And in many instances, when people become president, they use the very tactics of the old people who were in power, undermining the opposition, trying to weaken an opposition political parties, and all of these manipulation. You use the judiciary. So even though that space has opened for everyone to participate, but the quality of our governance has really not improved. So I think this is where the frustration actually does come from, that we have the freedom now, we can participate, but we are not improving governance. And this is the fundamental reason why this country went to civil war, why we killed ourselves, why we did everything that we did to the country. But yet when we've gone through all of that process, people get there and do the very same thing that those people who went before that we criticize today are doing. Like I was saying, on the rice issue, for instance, you have people who are in political power who also hold the private sector. They have rice farms, they have very big rubber farms and all of that. So these are things that other people use and say, if you are going to increase the price of rice, it's going to benefit those people. And you can see that in government today. You elect people, they have businesses, the government does business with them. So it's frustrating. We can say that we have multi-party, but I don't think the governance has really improved to be able to look after the lives and livelihood of those very people for whom we have fought over the years to improve our governance.
Mr. Yala, what can we learn from this thing? Because if things happen and you don't learn, then there's no point, right? I know those some of those things were very bad. It hurt us a lot. But what have we learned? Have we learned anything at all?
I would think so. I would think the leadership in Liberia, is learning. It has not all fallen in place. Like the political process all over the world, it comes gradually, it improves gradually. We are fine-tuning it. But yes, like Brother Kenneth said, people are still practicing old, practices, draconian practices or so, but at some point they check themselves. Now, you ask for instance, the lesson from the April 14 incident, so now coming to this point, whenever a group of people say they want to demonstrate and the government insists that they will not demonstrate and whatnot, no sooner than later they are reminded of what happened April 14 or so, they will back off. All right. They know that maybe the people will not stop. the people will continue to insist that they demonstrate because it's a precept of democracy. Just like freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of this, freedom of that, the people have the freedom to demonstrate. So again, going back to April 14, if only the government had reason where our put let the people demonstrate. Just put the police there to guide the people. Because in the first place, if any of us knew that they were going to be killing, you think I was even going to be out there? No, I'll be way in Jalatan or somewhere under the bed. But nobody anticipated killing or shooting at demonstrators or so. Of course, government concern is always, what if people are demonstrating and it goes out of control? People start breaking into stores and whatnot or so. But that's why you have the police there to make sure that those things don't happen. The police may not always be able to safeguard, that whole, result. But at the same time, that's the purpose of government to defend and to protect. So what have we learned today? I think the fact that government can count back on those experiences and realize that if you don't do this, this might be the consequence. If you do this, this might be the consequence or so. Even though again, it doesn't always work in that order, but I think there's a whole lot we have achieved moving forward.
But what do you think was the root cause? Because if you're learning anything, you first have to analyze the root cause and see how we can avoid a repeat.
Right. Like brother Khan said, that one of the things that made people to not trust government, that particular the increment in the price of rice, that policy there. If you had Toba, huge a rice farm, you had Jim Steve Philip with huge rice farm, you had government officials. Those are the only people that were going to benefit for any increment of rice, not the ordinary farmer that they were telling us were going to benefit. If you increase the price of rice, then that means they will make larger farms and whatnot. But they will increase the price of quote unquote country rice, and then
Right.
there will be no need for Pusawa rice and all that kind of stuff.
They were increasing the price of Pusawa so that people were turn to country rice. Right?
People will turn to country rice, but again, if you the sociology that was involved, you don't just decree people taste for anything. You don't take market cube from the market and bring some kind of bullion cube or whatever and expect the typical Liberian, who is used to market cube to just rush to it. It will not work. So those are the things
because nothing precluded you from having your own rice farm or anybody else so that you can sell rice and make money out of the country rice.
I agree with you, but what was the need for making larger farm for the man of Zozo or Foya or anywhere else? So the man had his nuclear to speak. I mean, if we don't add the extended family there, he may have one or two sons that were going to school. He was not paying much of a school fee, so he didn't have the need for that much of a cash. So why would we be making larger farm, so to speak? For argument's sake. Why would he be indulging in large farm or larger farm? So it doesn't make any economic sense. So you see the point, because he'd be selling rice for what? To buy, upcountry uniform. Not that it was free, but it was not any kind of big deal. You could wear khaki trousers and yellow shirt, any kind of shirt, and go to school. All right. So there was not much of a need for the subsistence farmer to make larger farm. That's the point that we have to look at. It made you would think it made economic sense because here on the show here that they were going to encourage farmers to make larger farm, and then we're going to discourage people from buying Pusawa rice and all that kind of thing. It doesn't work that way, or it didn't work that way. It never worked that way. You don't force people to change their taste, except in war,
Thank you. Let's listen to the broadcast at that time, so you can, before I get to Dr. Duke on how what we learned from it. Let's listen to this broadcast very quickly.
A news package that covers the week's important issues in Liberia. Your producer and narrator, as usual, is Jerry Wayan. First, this important statement from the Liberian government. In this era of discipline and responsibility, government will not countenance nor tolerate in the interests of law and order any disruptive public demonstration without permission. The President said, notwithstanding dialogues and specific details of application to demonstrate on an issue that has not been decided by government, which demonstration will serve no useful purpose, some citizens have decided to demonstrate in defiance of the laws and constituted authority of this country. President Talbot made this statement this morning during an emergency cabinet meeting as regards the intention of some citizens to demonstrate, using the right issue as an alibi and pretext for the promotion of lawlessness and the defiance of constituted authority. The President acquainted his official family of a letter written to him by Mr. Gabriel Marcus Matthews, in which Mr. Matthews misquoted and misinterpreted the report of Agriculture Minister Florence Chenoweth as to the quantity of rice produced in Liberia. The letter also requested that government should consider from him and his group a donation in the amount of $19,500 to assure adequate incentive to the farmers. Dr. Talbot told the cabinet that this offer had been rejected in an answer to Mr. Matthews, to the effect that government cannot accept any such offer as it is contrary to its solution to national problems.
Dr. Duke.
Yeah.
You listen to the report. What can we learn? And I was listening, and because of the show, I went through a lot of those things, and I said, "Oh wow, things have not changed." You know how when something happens, when the government comes up and give their side of the story, it can be so beautiful.
Yeah, that's what government does. It doesn't have to tell you the truth. It just want to appease you so you can go back to bed and get up in the morning and go to work. You say what we learn. I think we learn the hard way, one way, socially, economically. But politically, I would say we probably haven't learned much. As Kenny was saying again, politically, I think, to learn from something. You remember the 9/11 commission in this country. Right after it happened, they put together 4 people, the best brains in the country, said, reflect on this issue. Come up with solutions. That's why they came up with a new department, and a complete rehaul of the whole security system. We never had a chance to sit and say, how did 1979 really happen? What happened? What was the base, or how could it be avoided? There'd never been a research. We never sat to talk about it. We never sat down and said, okay, this is what happened. Except the government put together a commission that came up with a report. And after the report was done, they put it in a drawer and then start, doing OAU business. So on that end, I don't think, scientifically, we don't do, sometimes we take problems, and then say, yeah, we learn from intuition, we learn from hardship. But to sit as a country to say, these are the issues, this happened on April 14, 1979. What were the root causes? Yeah, we know. You can generalize it, as you say. You can generalize, say, okay, division, people were not getting paid, people were, there was too much money to one side and everybody was poor. Yeah, there's a lot of resentment, but it's not every day that people just get up and face guns and then say, fight. So how did that transform Liberian society? Did we have any discussion on that subject as a society, as a political class? No. And we jump to 1980. Nobody knows how to organize the coup, where he came from, who. So I don't think we learn the hard way. Like you fall, you learn the hard way. But in terms of realistic, rational politics, to sit and think about it as a nation, we haven't learned much because we don't study. We don't study our problems. We just glaze over it. The only library that I remember in Monrovia was the U.S. Embassy library on Ashmore Street. If you were there in high school, you never had access to books or anything to read.
USIS, yes.
Yeah?
I say USIS library.
Yeah, right there on top of that, in that Ashmore Street.
Yes.
So if you don't have a memory, how can you learn? It's a nation that doesn't want to remember anything. We don't have a library in the whole country. We don't have publishers.
Dr. Duke, that's the attempt the TRC made, right, to catalog what happened and all that.
Yeah, but the TRC will focus on the war.
It started from 79.
Yeah, it started from 79, but what happened before 79? That's the issue. When you start from 79, you just focus on the violence aspect of when it became violence. But what created the atmosphere to lead to that violence?
The TRC addressed that. That report addressed that.
Okay, then they did a good job. But we, as a nation, what do we learn from it? We're doing the same thing. The same exclusionary politics, the same politics of fear. You just had a counselor, a law. I mean, he said it right here. He said, I'm safe here because I don't want to be in Monrovia. Jokingly said, yeah, I don't want to be killed.
Yeah.
So what are we?
After I go to Mr. Connor, then we see how we can avoid a recurrence of what happened. But here is one of our viewers say, Dennis Jah probably benefited from the True Work Party corrupt practice. At the time the coup happened, I was not even in Dodoken, I was in the village of Dodoken. It had one hut. And we didn't hear about the coup until around 6 o'clock, the ERW program. So I don't know how I could have really benefited, but anyway. Mr. Kane, what have we learned anything? If yes, what is it?
Like I said, from the angle of governance and political processes, I mean, I agree with that. I don't think we've really learned a lot because we always fall back on those practices that happened in the past, the way people maneuver, they use power and all of that. I think the only thing that is changing gradually is, I mean, society maybe with the internet and everything that is happening around us, people are becoming a bit enlightened, and therefore it's going to put pressure on governance to be able to improve gradually. But I don't think we've really learned a lot. And like Dad was saying, this is really critical. We really don't have people, our own Liberians, documenting these things and writing about it for us to really be able to understand as a young generation, to understand what actually happened. There's even a segment of young people these days who don't even appreciate the progressives. People say they were the ones that caused the problem that we're in. But the question is not asked about what led them to be what they turned out to be. What were they opposing? Why were they opposing what they opposed? So if we don't know our own history, it becomes a problem for us. I mean, a couple of, I think years ago, UNDP was recruiting a consultant to write about Liberia's contribution to international organizations, to write about the role we play in forming the OAU, the UN, and all of that. Where are our academics for somebody else to be hired to do that? We hear this story that, okay, the OAU was founded in Sanikole. If you go to Addis Ababa now, we don't even have a portrait. I heard that a couple of years ago that they removed our portrait. I mean, there's no recognition of the role that we play. That's because we're not documenting. We don't know our own history. I mean, we just keep going on and going on. We're not writing. People say Liberians who don't read and all of that. It causes a problem for us. So the generation has a very short memory. Much of what we remember is from 1990 for our generation coming up. What happened before 1990? What led to 1979? Except we Google and we read a bit of it. So until we are really able to document these things and really be able to assess how we can transform this country, it's just going to be one person copy the next person, and then we move on. The other issue is, what have we even learned from the Civil War? Other countries change when they have this huge shock. Civil War, for instance, you can see Rwanda. They came and they said, we don't want to go back. They're moving forward. They have a huge representation of women in their parliament. We are still fighting to even pass a bill to increase the representation of women in our elected positions. After the Sierra Leonean Civil War, they passed their Decentralization Act as early as 2004. When the Civil War ended in 2002, when did we pass ours? 2018 is laying down there. So what have we really done to change the nature of governance, to change the architecture of the governance structure that led to exclusion and exploitation? It's not there. I think what has happened is that the minority that was in power has gone away. We have a group of other minorities that are in power now, and they get there and they just do exactly what the previous people did to the poor people. We exploit them for the fact that maybe they are not educated. We think we can do anything and go away with it, instead of feeding for them, that they've suffered a lot, and therefore we need to really help them. So I don't really think we've learned a lot.
Right. So now, Mr. Yala, what can we do now to avoid April 14, April 12th, and April 6th?
Good governance. Good governance. Good
So
governance.
what does good governance mean?
Right. Yeah, I'm coming to that. Like Brother Kana said, that's the crux of the matter, that we haven't had any governance structure, not so much the structure, but the leadership, since 1980 to address governance. And I'll put it in perspective because I got some friends that were in government, governorship of the country or so. I think they tried their level best, but again, because of the general sickness that Liberia has been going through, it could not just be easily resolved. Take for example, when the PRC, not Doe per se, but when the PRC overthrew the Togo government, I will tell you about the University of Liberia at the time. We embraced the PRC government, the Liberian National Student Union. We formed the first massive demonstration to go to lend our support to the government, to accommodate, to embrace the government, because we felt that in our own little gathering or so, that if we didn't do that, perhaps it was going to give room for any opposition element or so to regroup and come and overthrow that government. And what did the PRC government turn around to start doing? They started hunting, our membership. Communist Wisa was the first person, for that matter, that was hunted out of Liberia until he fled and went to Ghana, and he was residing there. Then comes in even before the Taylor government, the Sawyer government. When the Sawyer government came to power, regrettably or incidentally, it was a government of national unity, comprising people from all walks of life or so, political parties and various interest groups or so. So it didn't have any kind of ideological direction per se. All right. It had to listen to everybody, or, just to maintain the peace, or to go, for the peace of Liberia. Then when Ellen came in, the Ellen Johnson Sirleaf focus was not so much on development, but to put the government back on its feet. So it wasn't, some kind of structural thing, building bridges here, building hospitals here, whatnot, all that kind of stuff. They just simply retrofitted some of those things for people to go by easily, for people to get little medical care here and there. All right. So the Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, 12 years in power, if you put it in context or so, it was not, again, I wouldn't say it wasn't intended for development, but again, the task they had at hand from the beginning, it was just to put the government back on its feet. All right. So after 12 years, after the interim government, after 12 years of Ellen Sirleaf government or so now we're going to maybe 18, 20 years. Now we come here now, you would think people should be building on that. Again, not so much to beat down this administration, but again, it's out of frustration that one would say that this present government should be building on where they took power from, where they took authority from the Ellen Johnson time up to now. But again, we are disappointed. Again, like Brother Kana and Brother Dukley said, when these things are not happening, people are disenchanted. It results into all kinds of reactions. All right. And so, having said that, where do we go from here? We will just keep advocating people, keep holding people's feet to the fire to make sure that they live by our expectation. Because again, I got a lot of friends here. We sit down and talk on the phone all over and whatnot. Some of us have reached retirement age. We want to go home. Look at Brother Douglas with his gray hair now. You look at some chino with a chibi or something. But everybody ready to go home. But go home to what? When you hear about all of these, negativities going on in Liberia, people being killed, people getting missing, children being molested, and all this kind of stuff. Is that the Liberia we want to go to? No. So we hope that, for instance, the coming election, let me just jump, ahead one bit. The coming election, people will use that, and really use their smartness to say, look, we're tired, running, or we're tired suffering. So therefore, let's put somebody in power that will understand our problem, that will understand the issue, to try to help us to find solution. That's why we all crave and pray for. Like this coming election, having gone through whatever is the 12 years experience, 6 years experience, or a combination of all of those factors. Every election cycle, every election year, we should use that as some opportunity to make things better for ourselves. So I'm looking forward to this. If you ask me what do we do from now, I hope that Liberian people will use all of their past experiences to advise them, to inform us, to make a critical, better decision for ourselves moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Duke, how do we avoid April 6, April 12, April 14?
Well, I think what was lacking, we always talk about it, strong institutions. Governing institutions were lacking. If you don't have if you have a police that is more, partisan than professional. If you have a Supreme Court that is more partisan than, being national, and all of the institutions that we have, if they're strong enough, we'll get that good governance. If GSE does its job, LPPCC does, their job, everybody does what they're supposed to do under the Constitution, and I think that's what is lacking. That in 1979 we didn't have strong institutions. You had one-party state, and then from one-party state you had everybody lining up behind that person. So there was no discourse. There was no, what I was demonstration. Yes, you can demonstrate against ICE, then you go home. But why it became violent? Because everybody there was no professionalism. There was no professional to say, no, we can't do this. If you have a strong justice system where justice is applied to everyone, meaning nobody can be cheated of their rights, people will just go to sleep and know that if somebody wronged them, the next day they will have justice. Those are the things that you need. It doesn't take, as you said, Jala, I think if this government had just kept on track doing what was there, with all the problems we had, there was something. The problem was not to create this and that development, but it was just to bring the country from below zero to at least 1 + 1 or +2. And anybody could take it from that point. But again, it all comes down to institutions. If you talk about society, you talk about guardrails, how you stop certain things from happening. And you do that by creating institutions that are strong, professional, and look for the good, for the greater good, not just defending one person. I think that's what we need. And I think, and it also has to do with the middle class. 1979, if Jala had stayed, probably got his PhD or whatever, and gone home and teach at the university or whatever, his kid would be part of this emerging class, political class. But he's here, like all the educated Liberians. We have this debate. We don't have this debate in Liberia. There's nobody, university professor or philosopher or journalist sitting down doing this kind of debates. They don't have time because they're trying to survive. So the absence of a middle class to take up issues, debate, and then say these are the solutions is also very important. So until we develop a middle class, I think we're going to have a lot of problems because you just have traditional politics, people who just want power.
Dak, you done?
Yes.
So let me just pick up from where Dak stopped. Every time you make the country very difficult, those who try to get out are those who have capacity. They are the ones that will leave. And then you already complain that you don't have capacity. And those who have capacity, when they leave, they don't come out. Then you have a huge problem back home. And there's a lot of technical work that needs to be done in Liberia, building on the little progress that we made after the Civil War to build these institutions, to be able to deliver services, and to be able to improve our governance. And when you have a system where you have the good people that you have that should form part of this middle class. I remember, the past 12 years, that was one discussion that was there. We want to build a middle class. We want to build a middle class. But if you have that middle class people leaving the country and not even coming back, and then what happens in the background is when these people leave, you have a group of other people who take advantage of the political system and establish themselves. And then they even become an opposing force to those who go out. Then it becomes a huge problem. And so on a daily basis, we have people going out and they will struggle to stay out. They won't go back to the country. It is the country just losing. And so I would just, say what Doug said. We need to really build institutions. And when we build the institutions, we need to give them the space to do what they need to do. Because over the past 12 years, we built institutions and they are not doing what they need to do. See the Governance Commission, for instance. Establish this is the role of the Governance Commission, to improve governance so that we don't go back to the Civil War that we went through. We don't go back to April 14. We don't go back to April 12. But is the Governance Commission playing that role now? Probably not. Maybe the Internet Audit Commission, they were established to stop all of the bad things that happen in the public financial management system. Are they actually doing it? So when we build them, we need to really create that space for them to be able to work. But when we have this Superman, when you become the leader, you just want to be the one to direct everything, it kills the country. And then we'll be discussing this very thing after 20, 25 years again.
If I may add to that, Brother John. You hear me?
Hold on, let me announce that if you want to join the conversation, please call the number that's on the screen, 605-313-6004. The code is 791403. Our discussion, April 14, 1979, April 12, 1980, April 6, 1996. What happened? How can we, what did we learn from it? And how can we use that experience to make sure that these things don't happen again? Mr. Yala.
Thank you very much. I wanted to continue, to add to what Brother Kane and Brother Dukley said with regards to the intelligentsia or a good number of the technocrats, not being in the country, leaving the country and being out. I said it the last time on your other forum, and I will keep repeating it here, that when government continues to crack down on people who, the technocrats in the country, and therefore the people start running away, going into exile and whatnot, it becomes very dangerous. As I indicated earlier, that some of us have reached retirement age, we want to go back now. So you got all these, high brain power people, sitting there in the diaspora that want to go home. What do you think, that it could lead to? It could lead to something very, combustive. I don't want to say that, but those are possibilities. So government should be careful how you handle your intelligentsia in the country. If somebody really commits a crime, they commit a crime. They should pay for the crime.
But Mr. Yala, who's running after you? Who's trying to kill you?
No. I'm not saying about trying to run after me or kill me, but I'm just saying if you have a large percentage of your educated people out of the country and they want to go back, what would they? They will stop. Like they say, an idle mind.
Why would they not go back? No political prisoner has to continue to.
Oh no! When you kill 4 auditors in the scope of maybe 2-3 months or so, you kill the other professionals that in Liberia, no head and tail. When people are dying, people are getting missing and whatnot. Who wants to go there? So it may not be right. That somebody running after you personally or so, but the fear of the environment that is in Liberia, that when something happens to you, nothing comes out of it or so. Nobody wants that. People want to change that. We want to go home. The Liberia that we all fought for, we are fighting for, is a clean, clear, and safe Liberia. I don't want to go back home and work with
Mr. Yala, let me push you a little bit because I interview a lot of people who support the government. This is what they say, that this same thing were happening under President Sirleaf. So what's different?
I don't know why anybody ran away or left Liberia for some personal safety reason or so. I don't remember that. I mean, you and I, have been on these kind of forums or so, discussing all the issues or so during Ellen's time. I don't remember all discussing how people are leaving Liberia. As a matter of fact, people were running to Liberia. People were leaving from here, selling their houses and things, and moving to Liberia. It's only recently that those people have started returning back to America. All right, so I don't recall that of Ellen administration. Ellen may have had all her deficiencies or so. The primary thing that people talk about Ellen government was that she was condoning corruption. Other than corruption or so, I don't see who left Liberia running away from Ellen or running away from Liberia because the situation was so unbearable in Liberia. People were praising Liberia or not praising Ellen, but Liberia was coming up at the time under Ellen compared to now. I can tell you that for nothing,
Thank you. Thank you. Let me bring in some of our callers. We already have 2 callers lined up, and you can still call in. The phone line is on the screen. Mr. Elvis Morris, you're welcome. Thanks for calling.
Thank you, Mr. Jai, and hello to your fellow panelists. I want to say thank you to Mr. Dempster Yala. I think his contribution during the time of Power and Moja, I want to thank him for that, because those people are some of my heroes, my political heroes, and anybody who is saying that they are the cause of the problem in the country is just dead wrong. And I just want to say that first before I get to my my comments. I think the worst thing that happened, or the worst thing that didn't happen, for us to move forward is TRC Commission. And I think Ellen Johnson is squarely responsible for that travesty, because it would have been something that could rectify some of the ills in our society. It would have been perhaps the most comprehensive, talk we could have as a country. We could have done it our traditional way with the Palaba Hut method. We could also do some retributive justice, restorative justice. So we missed a golden opportunity to really go back, like even Dr. Duke was saying, to go back even further than that and see some of the root causes that was dividing us from the quote-unquote American Liberians and natives. So I think how we implemented the TRC Commission would have most of our folks would have had some sense of closure and in a way forward, and maybe a more concerted effort to unify the country as one in terms of bringing the different cultures and tribes together and unifying us on a one single objective. So that was the biggest point, because like Mr. Thomas said, a lot of these different countries have had civil conflicts. Their turning point is the TRC or something like it, where they can come to together and do what Rwanda did, pass legislations and pass certain ban or even asking people about their tribes and things like that, so people know what goes on in their country, what some of the problems are. They took that TRC or that reconciliation right after the war to rectify those things. And I think how we had the TRC, we would have done that for us. So, that's my biggest regret. I think the TRC not being implemented is one of the worst things I have. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you. Let me take the next caller. That's Madison Camus. Mr. Camus, you're live.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dennis, and hi to everybody on the panel there. Like the last caller said, we implemented the TRC. I guess we will have changed, of course, our history, but it seems to be like we continue to do the same thing over and over, expecting a brand new result, and that won't happen. All I can say, April 6, 1974, and the other April incident, Liberians have not learned anything yet. Government come in power to do the same old thing, and they use the word corruption to get voters for them. And when they get there, they do the same thing. And the Liberian population too, they continue to support and worship those who oppress them. So I just see the country going through the same cycle, and my expectation is very low. I don't know if the next government will do any kind of change or not. It's just sad, that's all.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Camus. Let me take the last caller here. Aaron Poblet. Aaron, you're live.
Hey, Dennis, how you doing?
Good. Aaron, this name is familiar. You are your barrel player.
I play for
for IE.
Oh, okay. I knew this name was all right. I used to be IE fan, but
yeah, I played for IE. Yeah, I played for IE, the Lone Star. I played couple of years with the current president.
Oh, okay.
But, let me just.
First of all, thanks for your service to our country.
Thank you. You're welcome, sir.
All right, go ahead, sir. Well,
let me just weigh in on the comments that one of your panelists made. I don't know his name, but I think it's the gentleman who said, when you ask the question that people, credit of the past government said, these things that happening in Nigeria were happening during Helen time. And he said during Helen time, people were running to Nigeria and stuff like that. I don't know what he's talking about because, people that live in Nigeria today and saying that the government, is after them and stuff like that, these same people are coming back and saying, oh, the government are after all. So I don't know where he's coming from or where he's taking that statement from and stuff like that. Okay? And let me agree with the past two callers that, in regards to the TRC implementation. Have we implemented the TRC, in Liberia? A lot of people would have had closures, with things that happened to them during the war and stuff like that. Our society, we have a very gullible society. And, to blame the people saying, oh, they support people who are president and stuff like that, I mean, I wouldn't want to say that. I wouldn't want to say that because if I'm catching a hard time and I see you, Mr. Dennis, you come to me and say you give me $5, just go and vote for you and stuff like that. I mean, I'm in a bind. I'm in a bind at that point. So I don't have a choice, but because I need that $5, to feed my family and stuff like that. Like I always say on your show, Mr. Dennis, when I call, the problem in Liberia is a systematic problem. It's not nothing about any government. George Weah leave office today or tomorrow, any government that comes, they will still take on that same, they will still have that same problem until we can fix the system. The system has been broken from the time I was home.
And who's supposed to fix this system? Aaron?
Government fixing it little by little. We have government trying their best. They're trying their best.
Okay.
People shouldn't, my thing is, people shouldn't complain, say this, yada, 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 to thinking that, the Cummings or the Boaka, I'll be specific, the Cummings or the Boaka or the Tier 1 Conglos will come and change anything. No, they will not do nothing different. Nothing different. We are doing better than what they did. All those people have political career. I for one of them. Okay, this is somebody who came from somewhere different and is trying his best. Okay?
Right.
Because the same what he's doing, they didn't do it now, so they want to complain. We're not going to fall for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have one last caller here. Caller, before you come in, I just want to remind our listeners that tomorrow at 8 o'clock, the debate has the April 14, 1979 Rice Riot changed Liberia for better or for worse. We have three guys who are part of the organizing committee for the Progressive Alliance of Liberia, PAL. That's J. Victor Nambe, say April 14 changed Liberia for better. Isaac Cetro say April 14 changed Liberia for better. And also Tia Jadia say it changed Liberia for better. On the other hand, Michael Patmo, Massa Washington, and Moses Sandy say not by sight. April 14 changed Liberia for the worse. You don't want to miss the debate tomorrow on FOL Friday Night Debate. Let me take another caller here. Caller, your name and where you're calling from. 346 area code.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Yes, everybody are listening to the program. My name is Deku Asmana, by the way. That conversation, very constructive. But my problem here with all the blame shifting, like everybody saying how we have implemented TRC. So
because Ellen didn't implement it, it didn't never going to be done? The current government, are they not responsible to do the thing? So who are we waiting for to implement that? You know, they are there now. And if you look at the current government, they were the champion of, World Foreign Code. So when they got there, what changed? If the government now, Judge Weah, says he cannot be the one to implement it, but he can just push the pen. Like, he can sign it. The entire country is yearning for this. Why can't you push the legislature to sign up on it? So who are we waiting for to implement that? So it's just shifting blame. Like, Joseph Walker is running around today and says he's the Messiah. How? 12 years he was there. And when you say that, I say, oh, he was just a vice president. So a vice president doesn't have a voice? So why should we have a vice president in the first place? You would say you can't do anything, but you stay there, you can resign. But you stay there for 12 years. You said they never listened to you. So why were you there then? So Liberia problem is very big, and we don't want to, grab the bull by the horn. It's just shifting blame from one person to another. And this is going to continue on. I don't know when.
Thank you. Thank you, Sekou.
So that's all right.
Thank you. Chris and another caller, please be brief. Our time, we are almost out of time. Mr. Christopher Tawasi, quickly, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ja. And Mr. Ja, every time we try to talk the Liberian thing, I will always come back and say the problem started in 1822 and beyond. We have to hold the American Liberian responsible, and we have to hold the so-called Congo people responsible. Mm-hmm. The indigenous came yesterday, and also America, because America failed to teach the American Liberian how to be responsible and have power. In return, the American Liberian did not adequately teach any or train anybody.
Mr. Tawasi.
Consider Monrovia.
Mr. Tawasi.
Monrovia.
Chris.
Yeah.
That was the same reasoning for 1980, and your government was overthrown, people were killed. So how can you still say?
Yeah, but they're not killed. Okay. 1980.
So, right, that's what I'm saying. So if we start to use that kind of thing, this group of Liberians responsible for our problem, that is not really reconciliatory.
From 1822 to 1980, who has the power and the money? Who still have the power and the money? Who still raped the country? Who stole from the country? Who invested? Who brought funds in the American bank and deposited them here? Who ran the country from 1822 to 1980? Where did all our public money, our funds, who stole them from the country and brought them in American banks? And if America want to play fair, America got to find these money and send them back to Liberia. Or America is equally so corrupt.
Thank you.
Because they allow it. They're not only the winners of their Liberia. African monies are all in American banks here.
So what lesson can we learn? What lesson can we learn from?
But America is also benefiting from stolen money.
Yeah. So what lesson can?
America, who's been living for what? 300 and some more years.
Chris.
Right? America.
Chris.
Yeah.
What lesson can we learn from April 12, April 14, and April 6?
I'm just saying, Mr. John, like I always come on the show when you're doing the history thing, the only way you can fix the future is when you go back to the past and learn instead of what went wrong, the errors. That's what historians can do. That's what writers and great teachers can do. That's what great politicians can do. Where did our forefathers went wrong from 1822 to today?
So how can we correct the problem now?
Let it be mean. Let it be raw and mean straight history. No sugarcoating.
Thank
no
you.
Trying to be fancy and nice.
Thank you.
That's the only way we can study the past and fix the future.
Thank you.
Until we do that, our problem, we're going to be here for a long time.
Thank you.
My only worry now is when President Weah leave. That's my party statement. I don't care wherever we say here. My worry is after President Weah, that person going to be a dictator. They're going to be mean. They're going to be vicious. They're going to be cruel. And we're going to be crying for President Weah. Because President Weah is a very fine, decent president. Nice president. That person is what I'm worried about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Chris, we don't want people to come and make some of these incendiary comments, right? Because sometimes when you make these comments, we are held responsible to say every problem in Liberia is a miracle. Liberia is Congo people. And that was the mindset. And Congo government, as you call it, was overthrown and people were killed. And you still having that same mindset, even 2023. I think that's absurd. We should stop doing that. Let me take the last caller from 701 area code. Please, quickly, your name and where you calling from?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. John, for taking my call and thanks to the panel. My name is Paul Kroma.
Which Kroma, Paul?
This is Rico. Can you hear me?
Yeah, what's your name again?
My name is Paul Kroma.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Kroma.
Paul Kroma.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so, first I say thanks to you all for this beautiful program, the enlightenment, but I would like to begin with the root cause. I remember you asked that question, what are some of the root causes for all this all the Aprils and April 14, April 12, April 6. The root cause for most of these things, like the last caller just stated, a lot of this came from the Toller administration.
What?
And the Toller administration, it was like people have so much power where, cannibalism was one of the main root causes.
What?
I grew up in Arkansas. Lower Lopa, then it was called Lower Lopa. All right? And grew up in Monrovia, Johannesburg, rap culture over there, Miami. All right? But when we go back to the so-called on the farm, in Arkansas, Swan, we found death bodies on the road. They just kill people. They just mutilate people. It was going on. And then our poor people over there, they had no power. They can't take nobody to court. Because if you're going to take somebody to court, you're going to be taking Mr. Maggie to court, or you're going to be taking Mr. Fidel or Prisoner to court. And you will never win. And that was one of the downfall of power. And like the last girl said, the problem has been from back here. This guy that ruled the country from the back in the 1822 or whatever time,
right?
1847. Those guys, they were those cruel to the people.
So
the same thing came down to 1979, the rights riot, came out.
So Mr. Kroman, Mr. Kroman, is the government today doing better, or is the government after October, are they doing better now to say, well, this thing that October did it, or are you saying even prior to October ruled for 27 years, you said things were okay, the problem started with October, is that what you're saying?
No, the problem is not just that was October. It started from way beyond October, and that October came,
how can we how can we fix it?
He never even built a road to reach from Ghana to Kipapa. He didn't even build a big road.
Tottenham build more roads than.
Let me just comment quickly.
Okay.
The issue here, 1980, from 1980 to whatever 1990, things have never changed. It's been the same thing.
Okay.
Every dumping, Charles Taylor, they all came and then they said, I'm from Arkansas, I know the people. All right, I saw everything. From 1980, I saw it. 79, I saw it. And April 6th, I was there.
Thank you.
All right, in Monrovia, in 14th Street. We got evacuated by one challenge to the neighboring country. You know what happened? The people they are still on, and when they stayed on for 1980, there was one overthrow trouble, then they set us back, and they set us, we were young people then, they set our lives back. We had to go, everything since Joe came into power, it was like a chaos. It was a disaster. Everything just went down, boom. And since then, it's been like that up to now.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I was just saying, I will rest my
Thank you for your contribution. Well, my panelists, I think our callers have spoken. Let me start. Time is fast spent. I don't like for us to go far beyond this 2-hour mark. So let's get into our Tabata session. Every year, every day, Tabata is going on. Tabata in the Kwa speaking or Kru speaking language means foolishness. Mr. Yala. And actually, let me correct myself. It came from Bella Yela. It's not Yala, it's Yela.
Yeah.
No. But let me correct you further. I did not come from Bella Yela. Even though I'm from Bapolo, I'm from a town called Bangay in Bapolo. Okay. Of course, I was sent to Bella Yela for 5 months by the Doe regime. But that's all part and parcel of the struggle, so no big deal. So yeah, what are you looking for? Tabata, you say? What is the meaning of Tabata?
And talking about Bella Yela, here is Mr. Yela in his hat, in your core hat. At the time that he was taken to Bella Yela, you have Dusty Wolo Collie.
Yes. Third from the right and fourth from the left.
Yeah.
Yes.
As Mr. Yela taken to being accused of distributing art leaflets.
Right.
Tabata means foolishness. Every year, there's some foolishness every day going on. So let me start with Thomas. So Thomas will give you an idea of his Tabata of the week.
Okay.
Thomas, what's your Tabata of the week?
I really wanted to pass it today.
All right. Sam Waller says, my Tabata this week is still expecting someone else to make Labrador perfect enough for them to return home before they go back. First, the reason was the lack of dual citizenship. Now it's shifted. No one else is going to fix Labrador for Liberians. Elvis Morris said, my Tabata is Ambassador Balu saying that the devil is working against the opposition uniting. Is that what the devil is focused on now? Political parties uniting? Dr. Drew, what's your Tabata of the week?
My Tabata of the week, they passed the budget. They passed the budget. Everybody was complaining about, but there was no discussion. Just pass it, just sign it. So they put it up. People made noise. They kept on the side for 3 months, and then they came back and signed it. Where everybody was talking about election process.
That too, Tipo Dempster said, Matabata is president. We have signed a national budget that he has no clue about. You must sit down there.
Okay.
I think President Weah knows exactly what's in the budget.
Right. So I think I follow the Tabata now. So let me say, first of all, that my Tabata is that the Election Commission is allowing people who should have resigned maybe a year or more than a year ago. They just started resigning 4 or 5 months to the elections. I think that is unfair, that is unconstitutional. And those are the little things that can bring the conflict, in society. You don't bend the rules for certain group of people, or because either they are your friends or you're afraid of someone. If they don't meet the criteria, also they don't meet it. I mean, and you have the law there, the rules there to back you up. All right, that's number one. Number two, if I could just get 30 seconds to respond to the guy who said some people are waiting for other people to fix Liberia before they will return home or so. He assuming that those of us in the diaspora, for example, have nothing to do with what's happening in Liberia. We just sit here and talk or so, not knowing and understanding that we play a vital role, in some of the transformation occurring in Liberia. We are the one, talking to Congress people. We are the one advocating for them, but he just doesn't know. All right. So I just wanted to correct that.
Right. He also said, the same guy, he said the progressive do bear significant responsibility and refuse to acknowledge any responsibility for their role in derailing the country. That's Sam Waller.
I want to derail the country from what to what, or from where to where, you know.
Thank you. My own tabata of the week is this whole concept, this whole idea of people going around and say two distinct political parties with distinct ideologies should come together and be one ticket. Every day I hear people say, oh, Cummins and Bwaka Cummins should have one ticket. To me, that's complete tabata, because if you think that this is the perfect way for them to win and they don't see it, do you still believe in their leadership and you still going to them to lead you? That's complete tabata. It's like here you say, well, Trump and Barack Obama competing for a job, so the two of you join. It makes no sense, and people should stop saying that. Let the people run. If you think they're not doing what you do, vote for somebody else or come and petition me.
You're right, Dennis. I agree with you on that.
All right. At this time, we'll go around the room for your closing comments. A few more tabata here that I can read. Dave just said my tabata of the week is the Farmington Declaration. Yeah. Let's start with Dr. Duke. What's your closing?
Well, my closing is that I think we have come a long way from 1980. Not everything was good. Not everything was happening the way we expected. But we are in a position now where, it's not like 1980, where you had one party system, some names that, just by calling your name, they knew who you were, where you were going, all of that. So that had changed. And there's some level of, there are certain things that nobody can do again in Liberia. I mean, they're talking about killing people, all of that, but they have to do it, in a way that nobody knows. They have to hide to do it. They did not hide to kill you. All you had to say was like, you want to overthrow me. And the next day you not Belayala or you executed or some lion will eat you. So those days are behind us. And that means that we have built something out of the process. That, no matter how things are bad, but you still have that sense that there's something holding Liberians together. We haven't learned all the lessons we need to learn, but I think we can still build on what we have. Take those institutions that work, open a space for everyone, let people feel free, because there's nothing more. I mean, war, the absence of war is not peace, as people will say. It depends on the atmosphere you create in the country. When people fear for their lives, when people think they cannot walk out in the street because somebody may attack them, or people are so poor that they will resort to anything, then you create an atmosphere that creates chaos. And this is what we lived through for the last 40 years, from one chaos to another one. And I think, we need to move on.
Mr. Cannon.
Thank you very much, Dennis. I mean, like I said from the beginning, the country has been challenged. We have gone through different phases of our history. We have lost some chances, but I think in this day and age, when countries are setting vision for themselves and moving forward and changing their stories, I think we should not be left behind in spite of all of the baggage of our history. I think if we make our minds up as a country that we want to change, some of the callers were saying, oh, nothing is going to change. I think Mr. Yala mentioned this. If we have a leadership that can bring the country together and set a vision for us to be able to transform that country, it's still possible. There's a possibility we can do it. I think the war destroyed our education system and all of that, but enlightenment is there. People can use the internet today to get educated. People are going to other places and going back to the country. If we can just harness those resources and be able to direct it to national development, growth and development, we can be able to move forward so that we cannot repeat all of these dates that we are discussing. So I think, but that responsibility is going to be on people who take political power and who take authority in the country to be able to see the country and to feel for these people who have suffered for 100 and some more years, who have just been in poverty. So I mean, as I conclude, I would just want to call on all of our political leaders to see where to be able to improve governance, build institutions, strengthen the institutions, so that it can work for all Liberians, so that we can have a country that we are all proud of. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Yela.
Yala.
Oh, okay.
Yala is the deal. Yala is the town.
Oh, okay.
Yes, but thank you again, Brother Ja, and the rest of the panelists, Brother Dukley, Brother Kane, and our listening audience, and even those who participated. You know, when God created us and divided us into tribes and nations, it was not intended for us to be fighting each other and tearing each other down and apart or so. It was intended for us to use those differences to come together and forge, you know, whatever resources and effort that we had to build a wonderful, beautiful society for wherever we live. Again, like Brother Kana said, so it becomes the responsibility of government to encourage us, to lead us into those directions. How can we, you know, come together as a nation, as one people, you know, to build a, you know, like Toba used to say, a wholesome functioning society. But when government lacks that impetus, you know, to direct us, to lead us or so, that's where some of these differences come from. People don't know how to direct those energies, those anxieties or so. It sometimes also lead into conflict. So I hope that, you know, moving forward, even the Liberian people, our war experience. But before I even go to the war experience, let me just jump one step. The TRC report, the final report of the TRC, especially the recommendations. When you read the recommendations, it has wonderful, beautiful ideas as to how, you know, we can come together, how we should forestall repeating the mistakes that our forefathers made in the past from 1822 up to 1980, 1990, how we can avoid those mistakes or so. It is not humanly possible that we avoid all of those mistakes, but if we consciously try our level best to make sure that we don't repeat those mistakes, you know, so like some of the things that we see happening today when it comes to, in fact, the electoral process, you know, how it's so aggravating, or so it could just, you know, make you want to just, you know, do something, you know, to do something, but no. So yeah, we need government to direct our activities, to give us vision and whatnot. But you know, they say, you know, people without vision will perish. So our government, I can tell anybody that this government here lacks vision. The way to take over power is a clear, glaring example to tell people, say, just leave your keys, you know, with the personnel director when you go out and whatnot or so. From that day on, they're looking for where the water tower is, where this water, you know, reservoir was built. Can you imagine all of those things? So it shows lack of direction, lack of management capacity, and all of that. Those are some of the things that are affecting us today. But again, you know, we hope that Liberian people can make use of the coming election to elect into office or offices the various candidates that they think can lead us, you know, to the promised land. Thank you.
Thank you. On that note, I say thank you so much for your time and discussing these issues. Appreciate your time so much. I want to thank our viewers, those who call in, those who commented. Always focus on Liberia, where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We always end with our song that says, "We are all Liberian." And that's the message I want all of us to take home tonight. Have a good night, and God bless you.
Good night.
Liberia is our home.